You're gonna set a record tonight? This is not live, you know.
I'll say.
Okay, welcome to this 12th meeting of the Milton Planning Board for the fiscal year 2014. I'm Alex Whiteside, the chairman, and we have a full board. And why don't they introduce themselves for those people who don't recognize them?
Emily Ennis, member.
Ed Duffy, member. Michael Kelly, member.
Jean Peterson, clerk.
Bernie Lynch, member.
And we have a town planner who is currently dealing with the selectmen, and after he's dealt with them, he will come and join us. Now, I think that we have some minutes to do, but I only found the October 24th, the October 25th, and the November 6th
That's what I
minutes.
had, yeah.
Okay, and I made some changes,
So shall we,
but they're not very big changes.
You wanna do the changes?
yeah, they look fine.
I'll show you the changes. I think that we'll just pass the changes around
Yep,
and see if you're agreeable. And if you are, then we're going to approve them. And if you're not, then I guess we won't, or we'll do something else.
Well, I viewed this one on tape, so I can't opine on this.
Okay. That's just the
I
town
did-
meeting
I did see
article.
it, yeah. I remember that, yep, that's good. How can you spell citizens wrong? My God.
It was just singular. Okay.
be nice.
You got a degree in English? I thought it was law.
No, it was in history. Ed, take a look at those. Yep,
So I got his
he was
attention.
listening.
You can hear that?
But, you know, it will go on the tape and it will be,
Confuse
they will
people.
say that the planning board is playing games.
We would never do that.
No, we're lightening up the meeting. That's what we're doing.
Okay, Mike. That's all. Pardon me.
So your trip to Ireland was a huge success.
I never should have gotten on the plane in the first place. It wasn't feeling well.
Oh, that's such a shame. Nothing worse than starting out a vacation not feeling well.
I had a great fair, so I hated the relinquish the fair, you know, crazy.
Is that the,
The Irish flu, that's tough.
It wasn't the Irish flu.
Of course, we put a sign up on the door upstairs to tell the public that we were down here.
oh, it's, they know that.
They'll walk in, they'll see the selectmen, and they'll ask, where's the
They'll
planning
say,
board?
where's the planning board?
Right.
Okay, now we will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended for October 24th, October 25th, and November 6th.
You want to do it all as one motion?
Yes.
All right, so moved.
And we have a second. All in favor? Aye. So they're approved. Good. Now, let's do this A&R plan before we get to our public hearing. And it does seem to me, if you look at it, it's awfully confusing because they've got lots A, 2, B, and C, which are all going to be combined into one lot. But it's their plan, And if we have a notation on the plan, Lot A2, Lot B, and Lot C are not buildable lots, but may be combined to create one buildable lot with 8,528 square feet and 86.46 feet of frontage. And we'll put that down as number 3.
Number 4?
Number 3. We'll take
Okay.
out 3 and make
So replace.
that.
Yeah.
You got that? I'm going to give this to Mr. Clark. And Mr. Clark is going to be able to endorse the plan.
I
Okay?
don't understand though. Would you go over it one more time?
Okay.
Maybe
We've
point out the
got,
map
we've
so
got,
that people can see what-
there's one owner of this, or two owners, Jonathan Fung and Shirley Chen. And Shirley Chen is here, and Jonathan Fung is your co-owner. Okay, so they own these two lots. They want to create
Shattered.
two buildable lots. And there was a 1961 conveyance that was somewhat inaccurate. So what they have done, rather than just show two lots, they've corrected the 1961 plan by showing Lot A2, Lot B, and Lot C. Those three lots are going to be combined to make one buildable lot, one buildable Residence C lot.
I see it.
And so we're going to have, in place of number 3 at the bottom, it's going to say Lot A2, Lot B, and Lot C are not buildable lots, but may be combined to create one buildable lot with 8,528 square feet and 86.46 feet of frontage. And that should do it.
Yeah.
I see it, thank you.
Just changing the description,
What?
just changing the description on point 3.
We're going to take out 3, and we're going to add that language, which is, do you want to take a look at the language? It's just accurate language. I mean, if you have a problem with the language, we'll change it next time, but you shouldn't, because I'm attempting to make this better than what you've got.
So originally, I thought you wanted just to show one lot, two lots.
Well, I would prefer that.
Come on up to the table.
Okay.
Yes, come up and introduce yourself.
I'm Shirley Chen, new to the town.
Welcome.
Hello. And you're the owner of these lots.
Yes.
And as I was saying, it would be easier on the buyer of the lot that the house isn't on
Yep.
if it were simply shown as one lot.
Would you recommend instead of showing A1, A2, B, C, just take out the A2, B, and C?
I would just have Lot A1 and Lot A2. A2 would be the A2, B, and C.
Okay, just show.
And
without-
just take out the lines in the middle. Take out the lot lines and just say Lot A2. Or you could have Lot A and B, if it doesn't matter.
Okay, then I would not have point B, right, correct? Because that's really reflecting the old plan. That's why it was kind of to begin with.
You would, what was the question?
The question is, you know how point B, it was according to the plan that was approved?
Yeah.
1961, that's
Yeah.
why we're showing like lot B and C. But if we're removing all the lines out, we would not have the description for point 2, that's why.
Well, my suggestion is that this be reduced and put in a corner of the plan.
Correct, yeah. But the
Oh,
verbiage explains
In
all
other
this.
words, and then explain what you've done down here. I think that we can work with you on, it would make a more saleable lot, I think. But, I mean, you'd have this as sort of the historical analysis, and then you'd show your two buildable lots, which I think would make your buyer a lot happier than buying
Confused.
3 lots.
Yeah.
So that's my suggestion, and Mr. Clark can talk to your engineer to do it.
Sure. Because when he briefly talked to me, he said just show 2 lots and have the description on the lot. Like the,
Well, you'd have the description in, right
You've got the
down
verbiage
where
there,
your
though.
1, 2, and 3 are.
oh, okay.
And this would just be reduced and put in the corner, and then there would be a description of how it resulted in the 2 lots shown on the main plan.
Part of the second lot, okay.
Right. I can see that your engineer is going to be confused, but we can assist them.
Yep. So just showing, make a copy of lot B and C, move it to like some corner, leaving this as is, but showing just part A and B.
Well, what you're going to do is you're going to take this entire thing, you're going to reduce it and put it, say, down
In the corner.
here.
Yep.
And then you're going to have a little explanation about how it corrects the old plan.
Okay.
And then you're going to have the main plan, which is going to show Lot A and Lot B, or Lot A1 and Lot
Yep.
A2, however you want to denominate them.
Yep.
And it's going to, you're going to take your lines out so that it's and you're going to have your area and your frontages shown on the plan so that whoever buys this is going to see that they've got a buildable lot.
Oh, okay, so the description, instead of A2, B, C, would just say A2, let's say.
It's
will
not
be-
even going to have to do that because it's going to be listed. It's going to be Lot A, area 8,000,
8,500.
so-and-so, frontage. Well, the frontage is going to be shown here
Yep,
on the plan.
okay.
And, you know, your engineer, I will talk to Mr. Clark about this.
Okay.
And he will get this, we'll get this done.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
I mean, this is how it should be.
So it would be, do you get to look at it again, or
We
Mr.?
do, are going to have to look at it again,
Okay, once the engineer fixes.
once it's fixed, yes.
Okay, sure.
But we can, we will work with it. We'll get it right.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I just want to ask Shirley a question. Did you ever get the sewer squared away?
Yes, it's hooked up to.
Was I right,
It's hooked up to the.
to the town?
Yes.
It's not septic, okay.
It's not septic.
I saved you how much money?
All right. Now, so we're not taking any action on this because you're going to come in with an updated plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And you're going to come in with it at our next meeting, which is when?
It is not listed.
It is not
Apparently
listed.
we have no next meeting.
It's
This
not
is it.
listed.
Next year,
The planning board is done.
it's next year.
No, I think it's going to be, say, 2 weeks from this Thursday?
Is that the 19th?
Bill was asking me, I'm not sure.
What?
Bill was asking me.
That's the
but I
19th then?
didn't-
Well, it is going to be 2 weeks from this Thursday.
It would be the 19th.
The
I can't make it.
19th.
Can't make it. Capital Planning's meeting, a special meeting, going over the police department's capital needs.
Well,
Which is the
when
same.
can you make it?
Can't make it the 19th.
Why can't the capital, you
And
know,
it-
we have
it's set one at
scheduled,
7
we
o'clock.
have
7
scheduled
o'clock.
our meetings on the third Thursday since the beginning of the year.
We're second and
What
fourth.
is today? Is today
We're
Thursday?
second and fourth,
Today's Tuesday.
not,
Right.
not first and third. Today is Tuesday, yeah.
Tuesday, so Al, that kind of.
No, but the third, well, in any event, when can you
get
make
4
it?
other members of the board.
Well,
You know,
we
you
may
need-
have,
Our normal meeting dates this month would be the 12th and the 26th.
okay, shall we meet on the 12th?
I can do the 12th, I'm pretty sure. Yes, in fact, I have leave for planning board on my work schedule.
All right, we're going to meet on the 12th. Okay,
So come back with the new plan on 12. Same time?
Yes.
yeah, we'll try and get you in before we keep you waiting.
Just came a little early, that's all.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll talk to Bill.
Yep.
All right, now we have a continued public hearing, continued from November 6th. Site plan approval at 480 Adams Street, the Blue Hills Bank. And I think that means Mr. Sheffield, doesn't it?
Yes, he's here.
And here he is.
Walks in, just got off the plane.
Okay, Mr. Sheffield, describe, bring us all up to date. I should note that we are being recorded for a future telecast, so bear that in mind.
Good evening. I'm Attorney Bob Sheffield, and I'm pleased to represent Asia Management, who purchased the building at 480 Adams Street near East Milton Square last year, just about this time. I'd like to introduce those that are here tonight, and they're all available for any questions. We have Chuck Hasher, President of Hasher Management. We have Paul Mahoney, who is with Hasher Management. We have Scott Thiemann with Blue Hills Bank. We have Ira Belaine, who's with DB2 Architecture. We have Michael Tremblay and Mike Santos from Howard Stein Hudson Associates, parking experts. So we have the crew tonight, and we are hopeful that we'll be able to answer all your questions, that we will receive an affirmative vote, and I'm glad to see someone here in person who is here only
In spirit last
in
time.
spirit last time.
Disembodied voice.
It's funny because I was not here at the very, very beginning of the meeting when it was probably said that someone was here by telephone, and when she started asking questions, I was shocked. Previously, we went through all the detail of the proposal. The primary purpose is to significantly improve a building that has been around for 50 years and has kind of grown a little lazy. It is not handicapped accessible. We are going to make it handicapped accessible by the addition of our elevator, which will be exterior to the building as the footprint currently exists. We also define the materials that would be made to the exterior of the building, and we went over these, and we discussed vehicular access, parking, etc. When we left, there were 4 open items that you asked us to look at. Number one is, could we reconfigure the parking so that it would provide more landscaping retention, particularly on Adams Street? And we considered this and now address it. The second thing is, you asked for a landscaping plan and a lighting plan. And when we have those tonight. And finally, you asked us to provide information on underground drainage systems. And I can answer that in 3 words. There aren't any. There's no underground drainage, none is being proposed, and it's all a natural situation. So we're not making any changes in that area, and there's no underground drainage as far as we know in the entire property. At this point, I would like to introduce Ira Belaine, who will review the proposed new parking lot configuration and landscape plan and lighting plan. Again, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to interrupt and ask your question.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Ira Beline. I'm an architect with DB2 Architecture. Our offices are in Woburn, and we've been working on 480 Adams Street for quite a while now, making plans to upgrade the building. Our site plan has changed in some significant ways. We had 3 parking spaces up at the front here, and what we've done now is extend some of the paving in the back in order to get a few more spaces back there. And so in effect, we've, moved, if we've had to take some green space, it's been put in the back where it's not really visible. We made a comment, thank you, we made a comment about the drainage system. Actually, the entire site, all the paved areas drains back here to a lawn area. So we, in effect, are way ahead of time. We have a rain garden without even having to worry about it, basically. The site is not soggy, so I think it does a pretty good job of accepting the water as it comes off the parking lots. And in effect, the only real increase in paving that we're going to be doing is in the back here, a couple of small spots around. This is the existing plantings plan that you requested. I'm sorry, it's not beautifully colored. It's very hard to get the elves to work this time of year. They're very busy working on toys, so I apologize for that. The new plan is really kind of simple in its effect. These are all linden trees. They're all mature. They're in pretty good shape. There is a nice oak, a nice red oak here. That's a very nice mature specimen. And basically, we're going to be, because it's so shady under there, we're going to be planting ground cover there. We're sensitive to blocking views of the traffic and the cars for people pulling out here, so we really don't want to do too much. We're going to keep the nice juniper here. What we're doing is really accenting the foundation plantings. We're going to be taking out the overgrown yews and the rhododendron and coming back with a new set of plants, very similar in character, so that what we want to do is allow the building to make a better presentation to the street. What the building lacks is, in some places, is our foundation plantings. So that makes the building look fairly stark. And so what we're going to be doing is planting along the entrance, planting along the foundations here and here. There's basically, we've reconfigured the back here because of the drive-through, and we have a couple of parking spaces back here now, one handicap space back here now. This will be ramped to provide handicapped access to the door. You're not going to be able to go much farther than that, but we're going to be doing that. So there are seasonal plantings. Most of these are shade type, just because of where we are in relationship to the sun. The birch and the rhododendron that are here, the mature rhododendron and the nice birch, are staying. We reconfigured the island, provided another small spot. Basically, really the only tree that we would like to remove in order to get the handicap parking spaces in here is this older pear tree. So what we plan on doing is taking it down. It's really just in the parking space, but planting back 2 trees instead. So in lieu of taking that down. As I said before, this all drains back here. There's just a triangular slice. It's about really just a few hundred square feet of additional paving in the back.
Just a question. Is that water from the roof too?
No, the water from the roof is piped into the storm. I think it's a combined storm sewer system.
You said they were underground.
Well, that's site drainage. Sorry, I mean there's no underground site drainage. There are definitely roof drains, and so.
So that's just from the site?
Correct,
So obviously it's gotta go by gravity, I mean, you're not gonna pump it up in there, so,
right.
okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's like a lot of buildings, older buildings, there's, I think it's,
There's gonna be a swale there to capture it?
well, it's very, this is very flat. It does gently grade down. This is about the size of a basketball court, a good-sized basketball court. And like I said, I mean, it's mowed all the time, so, and I started up here and was following the water and the rolling ball, et cetera, following the drainage, and everything ended up back there. And I was constantly looking for, built-up curbs and catch basins and some other, or even dry wells, and there's nothing like that. It basically gets absorbed in that piece of ground. Yes?
What will you do about snow storage?
Well, we do probably need a snow management plan, but I'm not sure exactly what they do with it now. I think it's actually placed back here. So when it melts, it's pretty much ends up in the same place.
There's no curb between the parking lot and the area where the water drains?
There is not. There is not. It just drains right across. So there's, when we move these parking spaces around and push this back a little bit, we're going to be able, there's a slight dip in the pavement there now that, we're going to be able to take out and make sure that it drains flat across.
Do you want to go into the lighting plan at this point?
Okay, we have a lighting plan. And I will throw these. This is the lighting plan and fixtures. We're replacing most of the site lighting. In fact, we're replacing all of the site lighting, which is pretty dim and unattractive presently. So the way we're going to light the site is, for the most part, we're lighting in from the perimeter in towards the building. We'll have new LED fixtures. There are the poles are 16 feet tall, and there's a couple of poles. There's one pole here that would sort of serve this area, and there's a couple of poles back here which serve the back. But along this street here, along Wood Street, there's two light poles that feed this way. There's also one here at the entrance, over the entrance. There's one at the drive, and there's one at the automobile entrance too. These three across the front are actually going to help quite a bit with safety, I think, because it will illuminate cars coming and going much better. There happens to be, the way the front of the building is illuminated now is a big floodlight off of the utility pole. And so it looks more like that's the light that you would probably use in the back of a warehouse as opposed to illuminating the front of your building. So we're going to get rid of that. At the entrances, there are new sconce lights, wall-mounted lights. And there's one over here, too, which actually shines down and illuminates the the queuing line here for the drive-through. There are a few recessed down lights. There's a couple in the drive-through, and there's a couple of new ones in the new canopy here. There's a product cut for those, pretty typical down lights. And then there's a landscape light that lights the trellis from below. And we're planning on having some foundation, or there's a planting bed between the new sidewalk and the building here. So we'll be planting that with hardy shrubs, I think, and also some clematis. Our intention is not to have a lot of vines and stuff climbing over the arbor. So the clematis will climb up a wall-mounted trellis between the new windows in the buildings. So And I think the clematis itself is, even once it loses its leaves, still has those very pretty remaining flowers on them. So I think we'll get more mileage out of them. So, yes.
Just a question, you mentioned that the lights were gonna be 15 feet high?
16 feet poles, yeah, 16
foot
foot.
poles,
Yep.
okay, that's,
Hmm.
what are the poles gonna look like that? I mean.
I'm sorry, yeah, if I am missing an image, it's those poles. So they would be either square tubes or round aluminum tubes. They're not decorative per se, they're pretty functional.
And all the lights will be shielded, so the light is directed downward. And
Yes,
in the
they're-
case of the landscaping, it's going to be directed towards the site. And
Correct. The fixtures have cutoffs.
not- Okay.
Yeah. I think the lighting with the LEDs is a little different, and there tends to be slightly lower light levels, but it's a much nicer light, and if you got the fixtures positioned correctly, you have a nice even light. It's not as glaring or as harsh as some other types of parking lot lighting.
Well, you've got a design for the trellis. It seemed to me that we were going to do that.
Yeah, again, I apologize for not being that much more specific, but the trellis here has a series of columns and a framework. Then resting on the framework are these steel channels. So they're steel-shaped channels. They're about this size. They're painted, and there's no roof on top. They just they have their ends sliced off a little bit to add some interest. But basically, it's to provide. You can see it's a gridded shadow underneath for the arbor. Yes, we have a couple of other. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what I was asking about.
Ask and you shall receive.
Yeah. We do not plan to have any vegetation on the trellis.
Well, I understand, but, you attach it and it's easy enough to spec it from what you've shown. All right, other questions here? Yes.
This is a total makeover of the exterior of the building, of the landscaping.
I think you'll see that the building will perceive it very differently.
My question is, how much of the building is going to be bagged and how much will remain the same?
How much what?
How much is the
How much
bank,
building percentage-wise?
percentage-wise?
The bank will occupy approximately 15% of the building.
One floor?
What?
It's just this,
1,500 square feet on one floor.
yeah, it's,
One floor?
Yes.
No, a fraction of a floor.
Not up and down, one
No,
floor.
it's just gonna be a one-story.
That's right.
right.
Yep.
This is the new first floor. This is the existing building here, and the bank branch will be located here. We're making new windows out onto the street to let people see in and see out and add more interest. Our elevator addition is going here in the corner. So it's pretty simple. This is not a great big space. The second floor, again, is the elevator, a small lobby, and a double height vestibule.
Thank you.
The elevator opens to, I think you said a lobby, it doesn't open to the outside.
Correct, yep. You go through yep, I'm sorry. You go through a vestibule.
lobby, yeah.
Right, the vestibule is an interior lobby here, elevators here, and there's another lobby directly above this one. we're looking forward to, and I think our tenants are looking forward to,
I'm sure they'll love
You
running,
know,
walking up those stairs.
hey, we're actually reconfiguring those stairs as well. So as much as we like to see those old steel stairs.
Is there a basement in that building?
Yes, there is.
There's a partial ground floor.
Seems like the Nannery used to,
Yeah, and the accountant is there,
Right.
Jessen.
Right. If you were to look at the building, it's really this L-shaped piece.
did the elevator go down to the basement too?
It does not. There's a handicap, the ground floor is accessible here. There's a handicapped accessible entrance there. And for it, right now, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it looks like that's going to remain a single tenant for quite a while. And it's extremely, we looked at, I don't know, many options as to where to place the elevator. First inside, and it's really, the structure of the building doesn't really lend itself to that. The first floor plate is reinforced concrete slab, actually, so it's much more difficult than you might think. And if we were to excavate out at the base of the building to try to get into the basement or into the ground floor in the front, it would be a lot more difficult.
Or a piston?
It's a hydraulic, yes, it'll be a hydraulic elevator.
All right, yes.
At this point, I'd like to introduce Michael Tremblay on traffic and parking.
Did you look at places that have LED lights, look at the front of the police stations?
7%.
Huge lights, LED, post lamps.
Do you have any questions on?
Why don't we address it first and then hand it out if we think necessary?
I just have one on the handicap entrances with that, it's a handicap parking spot that goes with it.
What parking people can you, we've got the.
Yes, there will be a handicapped access spot next to that entrance.
Thank you, Mike. Yes. Yeah.
I'm Mike Tremblay. I'm with Harrison Heads and Associates, and I'm working on the traffic
Okay,
here.
we've
So
got a question before you even start.
great, thank you.
Getting back to the first floor and the second floor. Pardon me. I'm a big fan of the Blue Hills. And I also have some money in the Blue Hills Bank.
Thank you.
However, I don't think that the blue effect on the second floor is all that pleasing to me. I know it looks good, but is that the intent, is to make these shades in here blue also, on the second floor?
The second floor actually isn't part of, actually, no, the second floor will not be blue.
Okay.
And the window shading? It appears that the windows are tinted, maybe just a.
That must be the copy.
It shows it up here too.
No, they're not going to be.
They're not going to be tinted.
Okay, all right, that's all. That would be very accessible.
No,
Thank
no,
you.
that's a good point.
Thank you.
Well, I'm disclosing, I actually have accounts at Blue Hills Bank.
Thank you, too.
Thank you.
All right.
So I believe last time we left off, we wanted to know a little bit more about how the traffic was going to interact with the East Milton Square project. The East Milton Square project is it's still under it's still in the design process. Early next year, the MassDOT 25% design process will start, and we'll be working on that at Howardson Hudson. In that work, they'll be we'll be doing completely new traffic counts in around the area because of the, partially because of the closure of Adams Street between Bryant Avenue and Granite Street, and a couple other, we want to make sure things haven't changed too much since the last time we did counts, which I believe was in 2010 or 11. So we'll get all new counts out there. We'll see how that closure has changed the way people drive out there, and as part of the East Milton Square project, any new trips from this project will be included with the future build analysis. So actually, will probably be considered as part of the existing analysis, assuming this project goes forward. So with that, I went over last time that the amount of project trips that this generates is it's pretty small compared to the amount of traffic on Adams Street. So In terms of the effect on the intersection, Adams Street at Bryant and Granite, I believe we add less than 1% of traffic to that intersection, so.
And that is basically insignificant in your view.
Yes. Again, we'll do some new counts, and we'll see how things have changed. Maybe they're more or less than the last time, but that'll be part of the East Milton Square project next year.
Excuse me, the other point is that there's, during the last session, we talked about traffic coming from the exit and going right. The vast majority of that traffic is coming over the Wood Street extension. And it is particularly difficult now for people that are going to be taking, let's say, a right turn up Edge Hill Road and to get all the way across. That's something that is being looked at as far as the Milton study. It appears that the additional amount of traffic generated going in that direction is relatively small from this particular site, and that the increase over what the current level is essentially minimal, because we're only adding, a footprint of an additional 700-something square feet, and that's mostly handicapped elevator accessibility issues. So we're not really adding to the usable square feet of the building by any sense whatsoever.
You are adding a drive-through, and that makes a difference. because
We
that
are adding
attracts
we are
cars
adding a
to the site.
drive-through. And the drive-through will be used particularly during the weekend. It will be used during the evenings. And I expect that it will be used more in the low peak hours for traffic than is now.
But it's one car at a time.
It's one car at a time.
Presumably, there will be space between while people transact at the window. It will give the one car time to clear before the next car.
How much did you add for stacking lanes for?
Pardon me?
The stacking lanes, so say you get, there's 4
Is
car
that
lengths
correct,
for
Ira?
stacking lanes?
Five cars can line up.
Okay.
Does that include the car at the
No.
ATM? So there's 5 cars in addition to the one at the ATM, so that's pretty long.
And it's a left turn only out of that site?
Yeah, Adams
Yes,
Street.
it
That
is.
be posted?
Yes, it can be.
Because I almost got nailed about 5 or 6 years ago from somebody making a right turn out of that site.
Yes, Adams Street is
It should-
one way
it should be
It is
until
entertaining.
west of Wood Street Extension. So we will definitely make sure that there is a
I would say
clear
make
signage
it
there.
a very clear sign for people. So this particular driver was elderly and clearly confused, but
As it
clear
happens.
sign
yeah.
would be good. So,
Being involved with the present East Milton Square configuration,
Yes.
I would assume that at Adams Street and Bryant Ave, that you have a rating for the traffic signal there, whether it's an A, B, C, or whatever.
Yeah, so I believe existing, it's an A there now, and we did a projection before we closed that leg off, and it remained an A. I'm not, like I said, we're going to do some new traffic counts to see, how things have changed, but that'll be part of the East Milton Square project in
It's
the
an
future.
A as it exists today?
yes.
With the addition of this project, does it change to
No,
a B?
it stays the same.
You were able to add the traffic
Yes, yep.
considerations? Okay.
Any other questions with traffic?
Any other questions here, or any questions? I think that you've addressed our issues, but let's see if we've got anyone out. Any other questions from the board? Then yes, Ed.
Pardon me. Regarding the Wood Street extension. The only person I ever saw walk over the Wood Street extension is myself. However, it's in terrible condition, the sidewalk. What can you do about it?
I think that they have plans to redo the whole Wood Street extension, and that would include the sidewalks. And I think they did do a very, very small part of that project, about 8 months ago? And I'd ask our Director of Planning for an update on what the state plans are as far as the Wood Avenue extension.
And that's you, Bill.
I'm a deer in the headlights. I don't know.
I think it's
I know
done.
who to ask, but I don't know.
I think it's done.
I thought it was done too.
And I think.
Really?
Yes, and I think they just neglected that sidewalk, Duffy sidewalk, and they neglected it. I think. Well, with.
I think we should call them back and have them do the sidewalk.
I'm the only one that uses it. We can look into that.
So I think the answer is it's up to the state.
I think,
Well, I don't think it's up to this developer to fix
Well, I
it.
know
No,
that's the
no,
answer
no,
he's trying to give indirectly.
It's either town-owned land or it's
state.
state-owned land. If it's state-owned land, that they should,
That's state, that's not.
That was closed for a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's, we will make inquiry about well, you're going to have to walk that sidewalk and report to the planning director.
I would also like to say that we spent quite a bit of time since our last meeting on the reconfiguration of the parking. And basically, we lost one space. We had 56 there existing. We were going to 58, but with the elimination of the 3 in the front we have, we're able to add, 2 more back. It comes to a net increase of 1, so we're going from 56 to 57. But I think that it's worth it because we've been able to retain a lot more of the landscaping on the Adams section of the property, and it will be a visual improvement.
Well, we think that your architects and engineers have been responsive, and this is good. Let's see if there's anyone out there in the audience who wants to be heard on this particular project. Anyone out there want to be heard on this particular project? I see no one. So
I concur with that.
The way we work these things usually is we approve the site plan and then we get a written decision. And often the written decision, we get a draft from the attorney for the applicant, and then we do a little reworking. So I would suggest that we adopt that procedure and approve this site plan subject to a satisfactory written site plan approval decision.
I'll second that.
And the site plan as described and shown, and I
All
think it's
attached pages,
all
et cetera, et
attached
cetera.
pages, yes. So we will, you'll have something to do in the next week.
Will you be able to get it to us before the 12th?
We're meeting on the 12th.
Of course.
Okay.
And they pay you.
So we have a motion and we have a second? Yeah. And do we have a discussion? I think it's a nice plan. And I really am grateful that you were so responsive to the concerns that we expressed.
I agree. I think it's going to be a much nicer project. It'll be good to see that building renovated. I appreciate the softening of the streetscape with the additional landscaping. So, looking forward to it.
Excellent.
I wasn't here at the last hearing. I watched it on television, and I don't even recognize this as what I saw when I saw it on television, so you did a good job.
Well, I think once again, the site plan approval process has resulted in an improved and more favorable site.
All right.
Have you taken the vote?
We're about to take the vote. All in favor of site plan approval? Aye. All right. It is a unanimous vote of the planning board, and we anticipate signing the written decision at our next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now,
Just a second. Bob, if we can get that so we can review
that?
it prior to the meeting, that would be helpful.
Do my very best.
Great, thanks. I know it's a tight time.
Thank you.
Where did that come from?
It just miraculously did.
It was just sitting there.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Now, Bill, while you were out, we tweaked the plan, and I will discuss the tweaking with you.
Of the A&R.
I met Shirley in the hall.
And was she ebullient about our proceedings?
She knew exactly what to do.
Now, we're going to discuss whether or not to support a variance for the Knights of Columbus building on Thatcher Street. And as you all may know, the Knights of Columbus building was a fraternal hall. And before then, I'm told that it was an ice house, but I could be wrong. In any event, the Knights have sold it, and there is a developer who wants to put condos into the old hall, and the description says that it's a historic structure which will be preserved, but I've got to say that since they're adding onto all sides of it and changing the roof line and changing the fenestration and changing the materials, no one is going to recognize it as a historic structure.
But it will not have been demolished.
It will not have been demolished. Quite right.
Hidden.
That's, my initial thought was that condominiums in an old fraternal hall might be a use that the town would support, and that good zoning could address this and make it possible. Depending on what town meeting does. I mean, it would be up to town meeting to convince the town meeting that, in fact, condo developments in residential areas in certain circumstances is appropriate. But the developer has decided to take a different tack. It doesn't want to propose new zoning. He wants to get a variance from basically all the zoning.
There is a time consideration going to town meeting, and that it's not until May.
There is,
so-
and the town meeting is in May.
Right.
And,
And it's his right to take this avenue, too.
what?
It's his right to go to the Board of Appeals.
Anyone can ask for a variance. I could ask for a variance to put in a bed and breakfast in my house. And in fact, if
That's a great use of
this
it.
is,
I'll be your first customer.
no, I'm simply saying zoning by variance is one way of doing it. But if that's how the town wants to go, then we don't need a bed and breakfast bylaw. People just go to the Board of Appeals and say, I'd like to put a B&B in my house.
I think we should have a further discussion on that when I get back to the Knights of Columbus Hall.
All right, get back to the Knights Club. The idea is to remove all the zoning constraints, frontage, area, number of buildings, setbacks.
Number of buildings? It's only going to have one building on the site.
It's going to have one building, number of
So,
units.
Number of units. yeah.
It's a 16,000 square foot lot, which would support two houses, two single-family houses, if there were enough frontage. But there's not enough frontage, it's only 65 feet. So there's not enough frontage for even one house.
But there is an existing building on it already, so presumably it could be turned into a single-family house.
It could be a very large
That's what I'm
single-family
saying,
house.
is it could be a very large single-family house, but the market is unlikely to support a large single-family house of 16,000 square feet in that particular area, which is a lot that is bordered by a commercial use. And does
And
not.
a church.
And a church.
And residential uses. Now, the big problem with this site is that there is a house at number 3 Laurel Road, which is not a part of this development. And number 3 Laurel Road, if you've ever walked past it, the yard is just full. I mean, I hesitate to use the word, but it does seem like junk.
But is the condition of the yard at 3 Laurel Road germane to the discussion of the next Columbus Hall? It's a separate piece of property, it's not part of this development. It's owned by a private owner. Is that something we should be discussing now?
Well, I
We
think,
have no control over what's in the yard.
I personally think it is, because it is essential to this development, if this development is to not have just 65 feet of frontage going in off Thatcher Street, right next to the Milton Food Mart. I mean, as I see it, without number 3 Laurel Road, not only would this, number 3 Laurel Road, unfortunately, is a terrible eyesore. And this development does nothing about nothing.
But it doesn't own,
I understand that.
so it
but
can't do anything about it.
I understand that, but.
That's why I'm saying I'm not sure. how
But what is
relevant it
the public benefit there has to be a public benefit. Not only does there have to be a public benefit, there has to be something unusual about this particular lot which justifies waiving the zoning. There is, yes.
At some point, I'd love to be joining as part
You're
of the discussion.
you're going to get your opportunity. This is a brief introduction, but if you want to make your presentation now, go ahead.
Well, because I think my presentation responds to a number of the questions that are being raised.
Well, I
and think
understand,
that
then we can ask the further questions later.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. It's Ned Corcoran. I am an attorney, live in Milton, based in Quincy, representing the developer Williams Avenue LLC, which is represented by its principal, Michael Moxley, who is the developer and the proponent. I thought very carefully about issues of variance, particularly with respect to the change in use, and issues with respect to the area, and I think respond appropriately to the issues of hardship and substantial derogation of the intent of the bylaw, which are the key components associated with the ability to approve a variance. One of the things that I did, I brought a printout of the town's, of a map of the area on the town's website that show essentially, got copies, I also have copies of two slightly modified site plans that just show minor variations on the parking scheme.
That's 50.
But basically, the lot, you're correct, it's 16,655 square feet. There should be 5 sets.
Okay.
That.
We
There's
don't
another one here.
have it. We have one set that we're sharing among the three of us.
There should be 5. I brought one for each of you. I can show
Would build a 6.
Complete set.
All right.
So we now have two sets between three.
Well, I understand. You and I will share, Bernie. Okay.
So I brought this map. It's downloaded from the town's website. It shows the property, which I have colored in yellow. It shows the abutting properties and the structures located thereon. The Chapter 40A, Section 3, Section 10, excuse me, which addresses the issue of variances, provides that with respect to particular land or structures, a variance from the terms of the applicable zoning may be granted if the authority specifically finds that owing to circumstances relating to soil conditions, shape, or topography of such land or structures, and especially affecting such land or structures, but not affecting generally the zoning district in which it is located. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the bylaw would involve substantial hardship. There's a case in Wareham, Mass. that dealt with a very similar issue where there was a church that was closed. It's located on Route 6, surrounded by residential with some commercial across the street. The court upheld the grant of a variance finding that the structure itself, the existence of a large, structurally sound church that could not be easily converted to a residential, for residential purposes in accordance with the bylaw, created a hardship that was substantial enough to allow variance. It also evaluated the neighborhood, and based on the neighborhood, it determined that the value associated with the attempt to redevelop could not be achieved and would therefore create additionally a hardship and would not derogate from the intent of the bylaw substantially. What we have here is a non-conforming block, and my client's property sits in the middle of it. Every property that surrounds this property is non-conforming, including the only single-family residence, which is the structure at 3 Laurel Road. That is non-conforming by reason of lot size, by reason of front, side, and rear yard setback, not to mention the condition that it's in. My client did make an effort to negotiate an effort to purchase the property. It is substantially underwater, and it is not worth the money that is owed on it. We understand that it may be subject to foreclosure if at a later date the bank were to determine that it would resell and it would sell at a value that would be reasonable. I think my client would be willing to reconsider for the purpose of adding that property to the site plan, but he has no current access and ability to acquire that property. He inquired about the notion of acquiring some form of a driveway across that lot, and that just can't work. So what do we have? We have 2 lots owned by the O'Neill family, which combined contain 2 old non-conforming commercial structures, neither one of which is in very handsome condition, and for which they take advantage of the existing parking lot that my client owns for parking for customers.
Is that the old gas station and
Yes.
the Milton Food Bar?
Yep, right on the corner.
Yeah,
So if you
okay.
look at, the property situated on the corner of a state roadway, which is Blue Hills Parkway, a major town roadway, which is Brook Road, it's a state-numbered route, and then it's surrounded by a combination of Thatcher Street and Laurel Road. Immediately on the westerly side, you have the 2 lots that have the Milton Food Mart and the old gas station, each of which violates zoning from setback perspective. They're pre-existing. They're there. You have a extremely large, according to town records, 4 condominium unit development on the next lot to the south. That building is 45 feet tall. We know of 4 units. There are 6 mailboxes, but there are 4 condominium units according to town records. The next 2 are 2 family residences, each of which violates zoning from side yard and other setback requirements. The first one, south of the 4 unit, is a 2-unit apartment. The next one, just to the south of that, was recently purchased. It was actually purchased between the time that we filed for the application for variance. It was purchased a couple of weeks ago. It is, I talked to the owner. The plan is to restore, convert to condos, and flip. So she's concerned about the appearance of the building and what impact that might have on her ability to resell as 2 condominiums. We have the church, which is a large institution, to the south. And then to the east, we have the single-family dwelling, which is violates from setbacks and other perspectives. And then just south of that, 5 and 7 Laurel Road, which is a 2-family. And then there are a number of other 2-families as you come south along Laurel Road. The combination of the 3 multifamily buildings on the 3 lots to the west of the property going towards Blue Hills Parkway, essentially an equivalent land area. According to town records, there are 8 units, perhaps 10. There are 21 bedrooms between them and inadequate parking for any of them. My client proposes to tear down the old three-bedroom residence, which is in very poor condition, and which the Historical Commission determined was not of historical significance, and restore and expand on the Knights building itself, which is non-conforming from a use perspective, it's non-conforming from existing setbacks perspective. It is 3.5 feet off of the westerly sideline, and it is less than 20 feet off of the southerly setback sideline from the Parkway Methodist Church. So we have a property with 2 buildings built in the 1880s by a gentleman named Chuddick. What I understood and I learned from the Historical Commission was originally a residence that he lived in, and that he owned some sort of a paper business, and he built the original portion of the Knights building to house, the warehouse, and to distribute paper products. It's turned over time. It was, when it was owned and operated by the Knights, the basement contained a bar, full bar. I think that liquor license was transferred to somewhere else in town. I'm not sure where it went, but I remember as a Little League coach, I think Mike was there at least once, that was where the National Little League conducted its draft on an annual basis.
Did you partake?
Well, we
Great.
Take your fifth. But it was a full bar.
Right, what happens at the Knights of Columbus stays at the Knights of Columbus.
Now, the basement, it's a full basement, it's a full bar. The basement itself creates a soil and topography condition that you'd have to, if you were to tear down the building, you'd have to fill the basement, you'd have to level it. The cost to demolish both buildings, to fill and level the site and redevelop, just to be able to begin to construct a new house, is well in excess of $100,000. That creates a financial hardship that is unreasonable to overcome, and I think provides the hardship portion of the variance. What's important is that the statute in the case law specifically recognizes the existence of structures and the condition of structures and the impact of redeveloping with respect to structures with respect when you discuss the hardship issue. And it's not just soil, lot shape and size or topography. Structures and the existence of structures and the capability of redeveloping those for purposes allowed under the zoning itself can be used to establish the question of a hardship. In addition, because this property is surrounded by pre-existing nonconformity on every side, there is no way that it could be redeveloped in any sense of the word from a financial perspective for a single-family residence. It just couldn't be done. Couldn't be done for a 2-family, which would be allowed under a special permit process in the town. So that's the only 2 things you can do as of right.
You're saying it couldn't be done.
It can't be done without financial hardship, and the statute recognizes financial hardship.
I understand, but you're saying that, and I can say it can be done without financial hardship, and so.
So that's our burden.
I'm just saying it doesn't make it true.
So that's our burden tomorrow night before the Board of Appeals, is whether we get there. But it's clear in my mind, and with experts, that we will overcome that hurdle. Whether we secure the variance is a different question. You are not entitled to a variance. No one's entitled to a variance. It's a discretionary action by the Board of Appeals, but I think there's a very strong case made for a variance. You don't have time to draft zoning, to wait till May to determine whether town meeting would agree that 6 units might be okay from a change of zoning perspective.
Why don't you have time?
Because the property was purchased in September. We're moving forward We don't have time to
You
address the...
understood what it was
We
zoned for
don't
when you
have-
bought
yes,
it.
that's right. And the plan was to try and secure variances, and if we can't, we move on.
You go
And he
and,
takes the
you
risk.
go to town meeting.
And we don't go to
They
town
don't have
meeting,
to do
we
that.
move on
If
and
they
sell the
don't get a
property.
variance,
If
they
they don't
should.
get a variance, they can always move on to a different project.
We
They
move
don't have to
on,
develop the
sell the
project.
property, and leave the town with what's there. And the town can take on whatever else it would like to do. We're not going to rezone a 16,000 square foot lot in the middle of a non-conforming block unless the town is prepared to consider fully rezoning the entire block. That's the only reasonable approach to rezoning in
That's
this
the
case.
only reasonable approach. You're absolutely right. That entire block should be rezoned, and taking this little lot and rezoning it through a variance is very poor planning, in my
Well,
view.
What would you
If we
rezone?
had, if you had,
What would you rezone it?
You rezone it condos. You rezone it for 6 condos.
No, I meant if you said the only logical route was in fact to rezone the whole block, what would you rezone the block?
You would take this, you'd make sure that the food mart doesn't get left high and dry.
So what would you rezone that block? Would you rezone it mixed
It would
use?
be, it would be mixed use. But
and I
if
would-
you just rezoned the residential, you'd obviously have to have more frontage than 65 feet going out onto Thatcher Street into that intersection. You'd have to have this frontage. In
Not
other
if you-
words,
not
number
if you
3
create-
Laurel Road is
not if you created-
essential to any sensible development.
if, you're right, it would be nice to have access to that property, but we don't
It
have
is
access to
It
the
is
property.
a huge eyesore, that property. That is what people complain about there, not the derelict Knights building.
Yes, but we don't have the authority.
We have the authority to
To-
rezone as we see fit.
We don't have the authority to compel that this developer do anything about 3 Laurel Road.
And I would also
Understand
suggest that you,
But we don't have any authority over variances.
No, we don't. They're just asking about whether or not we think this is a good idea.
Right.
It's going to be up to the ZBA tomorrow to decide what they
It
want
will
to do
be,
about it.
it will
And I
be
would
up to the ZBA.
suggest that
The
town
planning
meeting would
board-
have,
The
a-
planning board does have a input in that whether or not this, what is proposed is consistent with the residency zoning for the area. And that is something the planning board should not duck. And I don't think it is consistent. I think that putting 6 condos onto a 16,000 square foot lot with 2,500 square feet per condo and no frontage to speak of is a hugely poor idea.
I agree that it is not consistent with residency zoning. My question the question that I would answer is, since they are looking for a variance, do I agree that this would be a good use for this property?
No, do you agree that this is consistent with the zoning? That this is,
That's question number 1.
Well,
And I
is
agree.
that even,
Number
is
four.
that even a opinionated question? I mean, it's
it's clearly not
obviously not
consistent.
consistent.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
but that's
it's not
what
a question even.
The statute says it's got to be. I mean, the statute says.
statute says it's got to be consistent with zoning unless you were able to secure a variance.
Right, so
No,
then
no,
my
no,
next
no,
question
no. They said
is-
giving the zonance would not be inconsistent with the zoning.
Right.
This is supposed to fix up a little problem with the zoning, that literal enforcement of the zoning is going to create a hardship. They say there's nothing in the zoning that can be enforced. The whole zoning has to
No,
be
no, I
thrown
understand what
out.
you're saying. You're saying if they said, oh, all right, we're gonna build two single-family homes here, only we can't achieve the side distance and the back distance, you'd say, that's eligible for variance, because that's consistent with C, but it doesn't meet all the requirements.
It says, without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent or purpose of such ordinance or bylaw. And, you know, to me, to say, throw out the zoning, that's inconsistent with the zoning.
I'd also like to point out that every single lot that touches this is also inconsistent
And they're
with
probably
residency zoning.
grandfathered. That's what,
Yeah.
that's not, that's
I'd like to
different.
know the age of the 45-foot house, high house, that would be interesting.
It's probably pre-1936.
I would
And
suggest
that-
that the 4 condominium units were not pre-19.
How they got I mean, you
It'd be
know,
interesting to know the history
whether
of that.
they should have 4 condominium units with 6 mailboxes
Actually, it looks like
is
it's
a
5
question.
condominium units on this.
What?
Alex, I would agree that the optimal approach would be go to town meeting and change zoning. But you need a confluence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lot owners who would be willing to join in a thoughtful rezoning of this corner. We've got a commercial owner on one side who doesn't want to go near anything. We've made overtures to them to purchase the property, to incorporate that into a nice redevelopment. Don't talk to us. But please preserve our parking, because our customers park on your property. Now, that's a concern, that is a real concern for the neighborhood. What happens if this development doesn't occur as we're proposing, and there's no parking on that lot for the customers of those commercial uses? Now those people start to park on Laurel Road. Maybe their business continues to diminish, maybe it becomes a further eyesore, maybe it gets worse. We have a thoughtful plan that redevelops an existing structure, provides parking, addresses a significant need for the neighborhood with respect to parking associated with the commercial uses that occur on that corner. The court has said, the Supreme Court in Massachusetts said very clearly that you do not derogate from the intent of the bylaw when what you're proposing to do is put into a mix of properties that are not homogeneously zoned. This is a Resident C zone. None of the properties exist with respect to what's zoned. You can't, if you need all of those property owners to be willing to look at a thoughtful rezoning of the property before you could reasonably go to town meeting to consider a rezoning. Town meeting is not going to rezone the little property on Laurel Road without the consent of the owner. They're not going to rezone the O'Neill's property without the consent of the O'Neills.
It would be a PUD overlay.
It could be,
In other
but
words,
it is
it
very
would be
unli-
something, look, if you can't acquire that property at number 3 Laurel Road, this development is not going to be of any benefit to the neighborhood, because it's going to be stuck in the back with that little entrance from Thatcher Street, you know, what people will see is the terrible condition of number 3 Laurel Road and all the parking that is going to be out front here.
But
They're
again,
not gonna
there's
see the
nothing they
parking.
can do about 3 Laurel Road.
Parking is going to be nicely screened.
Well, they
They
can
don't
buy
own it.
3 Laurel
They-
Road.
They cannot buy 3 Laurel Road, and they can't be forced to buy 3 Laurel Road.
Should I buy 3 Laurel Road?
You should, because you need it for your for a sensible
No, he
development.
doesn't. He got a sensible
He
development plan.
doesn't, in my view, have a sensible development. He's got a big building stuck on a back lot, which he wants to, which really should be torn down, and probably could be torn down for short money, because it's nothing but a shell right now.
It has steel in it.
Just a question for Ned. Who owns Lot 1 on Laurel Road there?
That's part of Lot 3.
Oh, it's 3, okay.
It's more expensive to
That's
tear
joint.
downstairs than it is with them. Plus, they've got a basement.
So, in any event, that's my argument. I understand that if this was a perfect world, we'd be working together, we'd be going to town meeting in May, and we would be putting together a PUD overlay that would affect the entire district. That's not possible.
Yeah, didn't you sit down with some of the neighbors when you first started?
Yeah.
And I think he said maybe one didn't like it, but everyone else did like it.
I think everybody would love to see the whole corner blown up and start over. But the only real concern that we heard from any of the neighbors in the meeting was, where is the parking going to go? And particularly is what's going to happen to the parking for the customers of the food mart. Because right now, unfortunately for the neighborhood, the work that the town did with respect to expanding the sidewalk has actually made it more difficult to provide parking proximate to the front door of the food mart. So the provision of parking spaces within the site for that food mart is very, very important to the neighborhood, because otherwise, you're parking, you know, they're running up, parking on Thatcher Street, they're parking on Laurel Road, they're running in and out, and it becomes a difficult situation. This creates a convenience with respect to
Why
parking.
couldn't that configuration change somewhat? I mean, if the neighbors, you know, it's,
That's up to the town. The town would have to figure out what it would want to do to undo, what's a nice,
influence the neighbors.
and it's you know, what's there is attractive. There's a nice attractive planter to the left of the driveway entrance, sort of in that area between the driveway and the entrance to Thatcher Street. There's a nice grass area out in front of the property that exists, that's on the, that's between this property and Laurel Road. So that's attractive. The town put some planters on the other corner in front of the gas station, the old gas station. I know that the O'Neill family complains about having to maintain it. So that's an issue. You know, Mike Moxley has met with all of the direct abutters. He's made overtures to purchase the lot at 3 Laurel Road. It's not, there's the difference between what it's reasonably worth under any circumstance and what is owed on the property. And the cost to address what's on the property, whether to demolish the building or to restore it in some way, is beyond what's economically reasonable. So can't get there on that. You know, he's reached out to the O'Neills in an effort to acquire those 2 buildings. They're not interested in selling. All they cared about is, are you going to maintain any parking for me? Now, right now, their dumpster is on the Knights property, and they use the area in front of the Knights building for parking. The dumpster's going to be moved. They've agreed that they would have to move the dumpster, but Mike's agreed that he'd provide 4 parking spaces during the day for customers of the food mart. Those spaces would revert to guests and visitors of the condo unit owners, and the other
shared parking similar to 88 Warp Street and
exactly, and then
Abbey Park.
the 12 existing 12 spaces, the other 12 spaces are proposed, 2 would be available to each of the unit owners. So I think very strongly that this is the best of a difficult situation. I think it fits clearly within the case law that's been developed with respect to hardship and substantial derogation of the intent of the bylaw. The court is very clear that the derogation must be substantial. It can't just be a derogation. Any variance is obviously a derogation of the intent of the bylaw. If the intent of the bylaw was to create a homogeneous zoning area with paying attention to setbacks, building lot coverage, size, et cetera, you know, this corner wouldn't exist as it does. It wouldn't have been modified over time as it does. But all we can deal with is this property. We can't deal with the other properties. We tried.
Why wouldn't 4 units be better?
It's not economically feasible.
Well, but saying that, I say it is economically feasible, and you say, well, we'll
And
show the Board of Appeals.
come to us with your expert,
What?
Alex. Come to us with the value expert, okay?
Right.
Because
It's easy to say, Ned.
It is easy to
It's
say.
not economically feasible, but that's the
But
usual.
in reality,
That's the
the
usual.
burden of proof should be on you guys.
Exactly.
You want the variance.
We want the variance, and we have to establish what it is. We've got Mike is 30 years in this business. He knows it cold. He knows these numbers.
What was the intent of trying to purchase the Milton Food Mart and the gas station? If you had purchased that, what would have happened?
I think we would have come up with a much broader plan that would have been more responsive to a broader request for ideas. You could have done a nice mix of uses. You could have readjusted how the whole property got developed. But now you got some real value. You've got frontage, you've got some commercial uses that you could reintroduce. You know, it's an area that I think calls out, it has a potential to be a gateway site, but that gateway site, what Mike is doing, can be balanced with other new development that might come in. But if new development were to occur on the O'Neill's property, then you could easily introduce some things along the edge with respect to parking and otherwise it would make it worth. But we don't have a willing participant on that side of the property line, and we don't have a willing and able participant on the other side of the property line. So we're doing the best of making the best of a bad situation. And the combination of all of the things that surround it, their condition, their appearance, their nonconformities, 45 feet within 15 feet of the lot line, off of the front of the Knights building. That all has a significant detrimental effect on the broader value of this area. They all contribute to the demise economically of the area. What Mike is doing is taking something and making a positive change that may lead to some other benefit. This building is going to be attractive from all four sides. It's going to be a quiet use. The noise, if there is, from the parking will be away from the property owners along the westerly side. We've carefully adjusted the location of the parking so that we don't directly impinge on the single family that's there. We've created some green space, 6-foot fence with others buffering. We're doing what we can with the site to make it work.
Question. So I met with Ned a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, the week before
2 weeks ago.
Thanksgiving.
I think I've met or talked to each one of you individually, except for Ed, who was in
Yeah.
Ireland. But I met with several of you and talked
And I
with
have
Mike.
2 outstanding questions for that. You haven't said anything beyond what you told me earlier. The number of units, the number of bedrooms per unit, I think I had said that I'd prefer 2-bedroom units rather than 3, especially given its TOD, transit-oriented development orientation towards the Mattapan Trolley Station. And you have the parking softened on one side. There's space for a low planter. Obviously, you don't want to obscure the availability of parking for the Milton Food Mart, but there's space potentially for some sort of softening at a lower level there. I don't see those addressed on this plan, and I was wondering if you'd had a chance to discuss that with your client.
I have. We've talked to a number of people about the notion of 2 bedrooms versus 3.
Okay.
We're at 3. There's no change to that number. There's various opinions among a number of experts as to whether 2 bedrooms would be more valuable than 3 bedrooms. Right now, we're at 3. The issue of softening that edge, we haven't gone back and sort of developed that from a site plan perspective. That would be something we do when we come back to the board. If we achieve the variance tomorrow, we'd come back with, as we get into some more detailed site planning, that would be an issue. We have paid careful attention to the green space and the fencing sort of starting from the other side of the driveway entrance around the property. Mike has discussed the nature of the cedar fence along the westerly side with each of the 3 property owners along so that there's a consistency there. The issue of a planter, that's something that I think is depending on what it would look like and how, I think it's something that might be a nice attractive use.
Just to shield the pedestrians.
A little, yeah.
A little bit.
And a little sensitive to the conversations with the owners of the Food Mart property as to whether or not they, what they would like to see there as well. Because, but something that's low, creates a little bit of, puts that parking on the other side, is something I think, we would work through and be responsive to. The building has modified itself a little bit in response to meetings we had with the Historical Commission, originally showing all 6 entrances facing east to Laurel Road. One of the members of the Historical Commission thought that that we ought to reorient the entrance to the unit facing out to Thatcher Street, so that in fact looked like the front of the house as opposed to the side of the house. The architect did that when we met again with the Historical Commission the second time. They appreciated that effort. They liked how that, the appearance of that changed. And so, you know, with respect to that kind of stuff, I think Mike has been, he is responsive. He is open to ideas. We have, you'll see, as you can see from the two site plans, one's dated October 23, one's dated November 6. The only difference between those two plans is the location of the parking tray, the 10 parking spaces along the Laurel Road side, and the treatment, landscape treatment on that northeasterly corner. You know, we're being responsive to concerns of the neighbors as to, you know, when they look, what are you going to see if you're looking from Thatcher Street? They don't want to, you want to see a nice green presentation as opposed to just a row of parking. So that's a 6-foot cedar fence. We've moved it back. Some suggested that we ought to move it all the way back and just stick it down in the back corner. And I think that's an awful difficult additional little burden for the owner of that single family to have to think about having all of the parking immediately behind their back door. And so we thought green area would be a little more attractive.
This is number 3 you're talking about.
Number 3 Laurel. So that they wouldn't bear all of the burden of that parking. That we brought it back to the edge of that lot. It's not all the way back to the corner of the house, so that when you turn in, the parking is not directly and immediately visible. But we're sensitive to concerns that the parking ought not to be too close to the Thatcher Street entrance as well, and we could mitigate that. So those are the differences. We are somewhat ambivalent at the end of the day to which of those two. So if people have strong opinions one way or the other, I think we're open to that. But at the end of the day, I think that the site plan responds as much as possible to issues and concerns.
You done?
I am, unless there are other questions.
Okay, well, the law says variances are to be granted sparingly. They're not normally available to remedy deficiencies in frontage and area. They're limited to situations of hardship resulting from soil conditions, shape, or topography. Statutory hardship is usually present when a landowner cannot reasonably make use of his property for purposes or in a manner allowed by the zoning ordinance. And what you're saying here, I mean, your client knew when he bought this property in September what it was zoned for, and he said, let's take a flyer on a variance. But to say that there's a hardship because he now needs a variance because he bought the property, well knowing what it was zoned for, how you can say that this, what he wants to do is not in complete derogation of the zoning and the intent of the zoning, that there be single-family houses on 7,500 square foot lots with 75 feet of frontage each. Here you have 65 feet of frontage, and you have 16,000 square feet of area for 6 units. That comes down to about 2,500 square feet per unit and about 10 feet of frontage per unit. That is not consistent with the zoning. This hardship is purely financial, and it just seems to me that zoning by variance it was done on Milton Hill, but that was because there was a threat of a comprehensive permit, and it was easier to do it by variance than by comp permit. But here,
Just one question, where on Milton Hill? Just,
the
3650 Elliott is what
30
Alex is referring to.
36 to 50.
Oh, Elliott Street, okay.
Right, which was done by variance rather than
Milton
by
Hill House.
zoning, right.
So quick question,
I-
Alex. So you're saying that in order to be conforming by the zoning, it has to meet Residence C, 75-foot frontage, minimum 7,500 square foot lot.
That's
right?
what the zoning says.
So by that, they cannot in fact build anything on this? because
It's
they-
grandfathered, and there's an existing house.
So you're saying that the most that they could do is keep
No,
the
I'm
existing
thinking
house?
that they might get a variance for two houses because of, just because.
So one
of-
existing house, one 16,000 square foot house? They've got two
No, they've
buildings
got
up there.
16,000 square feet. They each could have a lot of 8,000
I
square
mean,
feet.
sorry,
but-
sorry, not 16,000. So you're saying that they could have
Two
these
houses.
two as single-family
So
houses?
what you're suggesting is the Knights of Columbus could have sold that lot to a developer who would have been willing to tear down.
I don't know who
Well,
they
that's-
could have sold
but
it
that's,
to.
but that's
now.
all they could have done under zoning.
But you,
Can
what you're saying is that the market dictates the zoning. And that,
Saying that the
because,
neighborhood
because you
dictates the
can't
zoning.
use this for what the zoning says, and the Knights wanted to get some money for it, and your client wanted to pay some money for it, that therefore, you throw the zoning out and you ask your client what he wants, and he says, I want 6 units. And that's what I need to make this work.
Can I ask that we look at this from a slightly different perspective for a moment?
Well, let's
Because I
look
wanna
at it
explore
under the law.
No, I want to explore this because
I
we.
have, and I'm going to win on that one.
We have two roles, this board. And this is going to the zoning board of appeals for a variance application. That's fine. That's up to them to decide whether or not it meets it.
Tomorrow night.
But we are also the planning board. And so in addition to our conversations about whether or not it meets the zoning, what I would like to ask is, what is good planning here for this site? We have an existing building that has been found to have some historic benefit for it. You know, the Historic Commission is in favor of retaining this building and has specified that and has worked with.
Did they say that, or did they simply weren't asked to tear it down so they didn't have to take a position?
My understanding is that they took a position. Did they take a, they certainly took a position on the other
They
building.
took a formal vote to authorize the demolition of the single family, and the discussion, although not voted on,
Okay,
was that they thought that the preserving the historic bones of the structure
okay,
was significant
all right.
and was a reasonable, and that the approach being taken with architectural renderings was appropriate. And they liked what they saw, and they were willing to say, preserve
Or
that.
were they willing to
take
put
this
it in
down.
writing? Did they put anything in writing?
Yeah, they did. They have a, they had a minute, and they put a letter to the building commissioner that authorized, that found that the single-family residence was not of historical significance and authorized its demolition. That was the formal action
All right.
of the
Okay.
board.
All right, so they've authorized demolition.
Right.
They have stated but not put into writing that they are interested in retaining this historic building. So, assuming that we are retaining the historic building, what can be done with it? Single-family home, would make a large single-family home, but single-family home, two-family home. They've proposed condo units. I suppose it's possible that since it had a commercial past or a place of assembly, it could have that as a future as well. What do we think, from a planning perspective, makes logical sense to use this building for? So you have to look at what else is in the neighborhood. Well, there's other condos in the neighborhood. It's within walking distance of a T station. Condos, or rather smaller housing units, or something that this town could use, because it has a lot of single-family homes, it has some two-family homes, it has some condos, but flexibility in housing choices is very important for any community, and this would provide some more flexibility. So from that perspective, it seems like a reasonable possibility. What else? What else would you want to see on this site? If
Well,
you were
let's
given-
just ask how many of these units are going to be affordable? 0.
zero. The neighborhoods are substantially.
Well, I mean, the neighborhood, fine.
And we're willing, and Mike is proposing to make a contribution to the town's affordable
Of how
housing.
much?
2,500 a unit.
2,500 a unit, which would be $12,000, which would
$15,000.
perhaps pay for half an architect's fee.
$15,000.
Well,
$15,000,
all I can
Hang
say
on,
is
Alex,
that
Alex.
I
just
had
have a
the
on
question.
that. All right, well, you question first and I'll question second.
It seems to me that affordable housing is something we have been talking about for a great deal of time, and if we're unwilling to do, I mean, even assuming that this zoning by variance were permissible, to say, oh, well, we don't care, we don't think there need be any affordable housing there, that would be, I'm speechless.
If you want to consider.
Speechless.
If you want to consider 10-plus units,
10-plus units
then we would
now.
think about affordable.
On 2 Adams Street, how much, again, did we put in, did the permit allow for the Affordable Housing Trust? We put a certain sum of money in there. It was either 25 or 45.
I thought it was
and don't remember
40.
which. Yeah, 40, around 40. And how many units was that?
I don't remember.
That's because the zoning didn't require affordable housing.
I'm just asking, well, the zoning
We're-
here doesn't require affordable housing either.
Total-
It is, the zoning doesn't because it's single-family houses.
I understand that. I was trying to come up with a per unit valuation. If we've already accepted something for one, what does that represent here?
This
I don't
is,
rem-
this
For a measure of
is,
the
this
offer.
is, this is apples and oranges. That affordable housing is absolutely critical here, and I would suggest at least 2 units, if it were to go through. But I don't think that it should be zoning by variance. I think that is just wrong.
You and I have a philosophical difference of opinion on that. I think I'm right on the law, you don't. We can agree to disagree. I think that there's a very strong chance that we will be successful in the variance application. I can't say that for certain. We have a hearing tomorrow night with respect to that. We're not entitled to a variance, no one is entitled to it. But there is strong case law that is on point to this, and I think we have a very strong case. You have to account.
What is the case for no affordable housing?
Affordable housing is a different issue. That is a state mandate to provide 10% affordable housing.
These are units outside of zoning, like permanent units, and it seems to me that how you can divorce them, I don't know.
I think that the neighborhood was not unhappy when we suggested that there would not be affordable units.
What if they
as to
were
opposed to
Section 8
affordable.
units? Would that be something that made people happy? Are they going to be
They're not going to be
Section 8
Section 8. They're
units?
going to be market-based condominiums. They're going to sell for approximately $450,000 a unit.
If any location that I've seen to date loans itself to affordable housing, this certainly is it.
The whole corner does. But to do affordable, you need at least 10.
Why?
to
You
make it
need
affordable.
one, is to do affordable, you need one.
Right. But that means you have to reduce your price significantly below what is market-based. And that drives the project value down below what's reasonable. So
I
if you want
can't-
to, if you want to recommend 10, we can go back to we can amend at the planning board to the
suggest-
Board of Appeals tomorrow.
I suggest change the zoning if you want to put in 6 units. But going and asking for a variance with no affordable housing is,
We'll do 10, all affordable. How's that?
I think that sounds interesting. I don't think you will.
Let's see what the letters to the editor look
I
like on
don't
that
think
one.
you will. I don't think that it works financially.
You have no basis to say that.
I
I'm not
do,
saying you
I
don't
do.
work. How?
I was the chief counsel of the Department of Housing and Community Development, and I dealt with these things all the time.
I understand that, but you don't know what their acquisition costs are, that you don't know
I
what
think
their
the
cost of
acquisition
destruction, you
cost
don't know
was-
you know, you don't have their pro formas in front of you. You can make a general statement on the cost of affordable
You
housing,
can, you
and
can
see- but
indeed.
you don't
You
have their
can indeed.
specific pro
You
forma.
can indeed. You can indeed make a general statement on the
Check out
cost
10
of housing.
affordable units, I mean, that's
Yeah.
great, 2 bedrooms.
free.
I think the fact that,
You know, I went to a recent seminar hosted by the former executive director of Mass Housing, and one of the big issue for the state and the issue of affordability is the number of bedrooms per unit. Too many of them are developed with ones and twos, and they're not being developed for families, which need at least 3. Now, that invites all sorts of impact, but in this case, we're proposing 3 bedrooms, which responds to that market need.
How many children would that mean? 6?
No, you'd have, well, I don't know.
I thought that the idea was that
around.
these were people who, single-parent households with kids who wanted to stay in the schools.
No, I think it's more likely to be young families with children moving into Milton to get into the school system, and then moving beyond that to other residential ownership. It'll probably turn on that basis. If the market, if it were 2, then you'd be thinking about sort of a divorcee, single parent who's looking to stay in Milton so they can be nearby their children, have the children visit, easily get to baseball games, hockey games, whatever in the town, be proximate to school, be available to meet with their friends. It wouldn't be taking them out of town for weekend visits. They'd be there, be affordable basis. So that's the.
I think
that's
you
the
too, you'd have a
market.
lot of retarees and single people.
I think you're right. I think you're right. If you had 2, you wouldn't have.
We're in a development that had 2 bedroom units, and everybody in there was either retired or single people.
Exactly, and that's the,
There was nothing to do
and
with any
that's,
children.
and that's the mark, if it's 2 bedrooms, it's no children, if it's 3, it's children.
And it has an impact on the school system.
Exactly. We think the impact on the schools will be the impact on the town's budget will be net positive, because this has been a tax exempt property. We'll be introducing
taxes.
somewhere north of $50,000 in net new tax revenue to the town. Whatever the cost to educate children obviously is some, but it's probably more likely, given it's condominium and ownership-based as opposed to rental, that it'll be first-time buyers with younger children, whether they would remain during the entire schooling of those children is a question. I think it's more likely that they would, as the children grow, they want a yard, they would move, buy again, once they're into town, buy with a yard, and then resell, and it would churn to sort of a younger family. It wouldn't be older, probably be younger, with younger children. It's attractive, obviously, for younger children because it's essentially across the street from.
The high school,
No, well, it's
Junior
walking
high.
distance to 3 schools.
that's right.
Tucker School is practically across the street. Pierce is right up the road, and the high school's not much further. So it is,
Up a Catholic
It's a try.
Good
school.
location.
it's a great location. It is transit-oriented. It's less than half a mile, it's probably a quarter of a mile from trolley station.
Isn't there
and
a
it
bus
is-
stop right outside?
There are bus
Yeah, bus
stops
stop right
that
there.
serve more than one bus line. So we think for a lot of reasons, it's the right thing to do. In the big picture, rezoning the whole block would be worth considering, but unless you have a whole set of willing accomplices, I don't think that's practical or doable.
But if it came through, whether it was part of another planning process or whatever, you would not be opposed, your client would not be opposed to rezoning that.
To incorporating into a future
Mixed
plan unit
use.
development overlay?
Yeah.
No, I think that we probably, there would be value to doing that, because, doing something that further redevelops this corner would only help. And, you'd have a.
If you get your variance tomorrow night, that would not preempt that from happening.
No, not at all. I mean, I don't know that, that the site itself would lend itself to much more development unless other components of the property around it were acquired and then assimilated into a further development.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a possibility you could shift, for example, if more lots were acquired, you could shift the parking to other spots.
Right. I mean, you could you know, 3 Laurel Road, 1 and 3 Laurel Road became available and at a price because of, you know, whatever, that's beyond our ability to address, that could certainly be incorporated into a future redevelopment of the site.
Not from the present developer, though.
I think by the time that all happens, you've got a condominium association with 6 unit owners, and, you know, I would think that they would be, in their best interest, they'd be thinking about, you know, how do you further clean up the area?
Yeah, but I don't think you're gonna have people that are, if people buy a condo there, I don't think they're thinking in, as you kind of commented earlier, in long-term. So when people are not thinking in long-term and they say, well, my condo fee presently is X dollars a month, and oh, you want us to join together and purchase this land, now my condo fee is gonna go time and a half? Nah, I don't think so.
Yeah, you're probably right.
The same in all honesty with the present developer. I mean, if I get a variance to build this and that becomes available to buy, why the hell am I gonna buy that? I can already build it and I don't have to spend that money. Why would I spend more money? It doesn't make any human sense to me.
If the other properties became available at a reasonable value, that made sense from a value perspective, and Mike was still the owner and developing, there are some adjustments that could be made incorporating those other properties into a rezoning plan. Now, there's a limited window of time to do that, because if Mike is successful with the Board of Appeals, then he's going to be redeveloped and gone, you know, a year from now. So, you know, that's just a practical issue. If we're unsuccessful with the zoning, then it gets boarded up, resold, and then the town deals with whatever comes next.
Well, at that point, in reality, at some time, it may become part of it.
And the town, if you had and the town could either spot zone that spot, could rezone that spot, or it could come up with a broader zoning plan. But I would think at that point, you'd need the cooperation of the other property owners. You know, what would that entail? How would it affect their property? They need to be able to think about what a broader zoning plan might look like and how that might affect their future rights. You know, so right now you have 4 condominium owners on that large structure. You know, what's in it to them to do something different? Probably not much. You're going to have 2 condominiums in the 2-family at 154 and 156 Blue Hills Parkway. That's the property that abuts on the southwesterly corner. And because that is a spec buyer redeveloper.
Are they condos now?
No.
Okay.
It's an apartment building, 2 apartments.
I mean, to Alex's point, Ned, a PUD for a mixed use, an overlay in that area would probably increase the property values of all of those properties. So, in the long run.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that,
Yeah.
but that.
I mean, I'm not saying that it helps your client at this point, but making sure that we don't preclude that option in the future is important.
Yeah, and I think that if there was a thoughtful PUD redevelopment process that was undertaken, then I think it would be in the economic best interest of the 6 new unit owners to participate in that. Because if it's done well, it's going to enhance their value, it'll enhance their resale value, even if nothing else is done to that property. It will lead to some thoughtful redevelopment of other properties, and this becomes the quote-unquote anchor, if you will, of that redevelopment. If we're unsuccessful with the variance, then everyone moves on.
All right. Shall we terminate this now? And see whether or not we want to send a letter supporting the variance to the Board of Appeals? I don't think we want to do that.
I can only make a comment on 2 fronts. When Emily said, looking at it as a planner, that's, certainly a good thought to say what's the final product we get in an area in Milton that helps or hinders the community, or whatever the case may be. I don't think the development as it sits with the 3 bedrooms is necessarily a positive. So on a planning side, I don't necessarily think it, as it sits, is a positive. But on the variances, best I can discern from the conversations I've heard, I don't think it's in a position for a variance.
But you're not the Board of Appeals.
Well, this is a question
I've
of
just
whether
said what I
we're
discerned from the
writing a
conversation I
letter
had.
supporting this particular
It seems to me
variance.
that a variance is something that, in as far as a hardship, I think it was more of a risk that was taken by the developer than a hardship. Understanding what you get into, if he only bought it in September of 2013. I mean, it isn't like he's had it for 50 years and his grandfather left it to him, now what the hell is he gonna do with it? But it was more of a risk but it seems to me the variance is in place to, I want to develop something that is in the intent of zoning C, but just can't be done for fine reasons, like I just can't accomplish 75 foot of frontage. I can get 68. Well, geez, that's, but you're still trying to live within the zoning, but you can't do it because of that reason. That's a hardship, that's a simple variance, and things can go even further, but this seems to go drastically beyond that, in my mind, from what I've heard.
The Board of Appeal might craft it a little different way. They have so much leeway. That's...
So it's not even, to me, it's not even like, can you support it or can't you? Is it in your mind eligible for a variance?
I would vote to submit it to the Board of Appeals, but don't put words in their mouths that they have to exactly come up with what they
The
want.
question is whether or not we're going to support, this is what was on the agenda, whether we're going to support it, not anything else.
I support sending it to them.
Okay, but
Let them
but
make
that,
the decision.
okay, but
Let's go into them either way. So.
Yeah, exactly.
That indicates that we're not going to, as I get from, do you have a feeling, Ed?
What is before me right here, I cannot support it.
Okay.
Pardon me.
But,
Do I get a?
yes, of course you do. Of course you do. Last
you're very
but not least.
I think if we accept the preservation of the building as a given, just for the sake of this argument, then they will need a variance to do pretty much anything with it, except possibly a single-family home. And I doubt the market's going to support a single-family home of this size in this position.
You could do a hospice.
They could do a hospice, yes. But almost any other use, they're going to need a variance anyway. From a use perspective, I would have preferred either a combination of 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units or all 2-bedroom units rather than all 3-bedroom units. Just given its position relative to the other condos, relative to the TOD market, in my view, it would have been more sense to have the smaller number of bedrooms per unit. I appreciate, as I said, I appreciate that it doesn't meet the current zoning. I absolutely understand that. But no use that preserves that building, except for one, would have met the current zoning.
Emily, with all due respect for interrupting,
Yeah.
I mean, again, we're just taking a second-hand interpretation with this historical commission.
Yeah, that's why I said, given the assumption of preservation of the building, yeah.
Well
Yeah.
said, but, I mean, it seems to me, it's, with the historic commission, is it better to keep it or not keep it? It's better to keep it. But I used to work in buildings downtown Boston, and if you can't keep the better part of the facade and the fascia of the building in its historical, context, then you're not accomplishing anything. If you keep the
Yeah.
skeleton of the building and it doesn't appear as the historic building that it
And then
once
you
did,
cover it
then
up.
it's like,
Yeah, and, in an ideal situation, you wouldn't have the main facade of the building this far away from the street with
Well,
parking
that's all-
in front
my
of
point
it,
is, I don't think the
you know.
historic commission would fight tearing it down.
Yeah, There is that. They weren't
You
asked for a
said, would you
formal-
like this, they might say, you sure? Would you fight tooth and nail to have it tear down?
It really is a very mediocre building.
Ooh. Oh.
That's an opinion again, but.
I think we need the historic commission in here and set Alex against them. Ah, you're
No,
preserving
no,
a mediocre building.
I think that all you have to do is go look at it, and you'll see it's a very mediocre
To
building.
each his own. I don't disagree with you.
You know, I think having more housing choice in Milton is an excellent idea. I certainly appreciate your arguments on affordable housing, Alex, especially given what else we have to discuss tonight. But I would have preferred the two-bedroom units. So-
Okay, so this indicates that we're not going to send a letter to the Board of Appeals supporting this. Now we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda.
Which is,
Why can't the record show that we're not going to send such a letter?
Because
but that
the agenda said whether we're going to send, whether we're going to support this. That's what the agenda said. And
I feel sure that our conversation will probably be reported tomorrow night.
discussion.
Hopefully they're home watching it now.
Discussion whether to,
Now,
no,
remember,
that's not,
we're
we're
not
not live.
Oh, that's
Discussion
right.
whether
They're
to
going to
support
miss,
variance request for condominium conversion. We've discussed it, we're not going to support it. And we're going to now,
All right, just read that again, what the minutes, what the agenda says.
discussion whether to support variance request for condominium conversion on Thatcher Street.
Well, yeah, we're not saying 6 units. by
I don't
saying
think,
this.
I think what Alex is trying to say is there's not enough votes to to agree to
Yeah.
send a letter supporting this in full. Some of us have support for certain elements of it. I certainly like this better than some other options, for example, but there's not enough support, a consensus across the entire board to support sending a letter. Have I just put words in your mouth, or is that
Well, I
reasonable
mean,
with what
there's
you're
not
saying?
there's not enough consensus to send a letter
Yes.
opposing it, but that's not what the agenda says, whether or not we're going to support this, not,
You don't have enough consensus to either support or oppose.
Mr. Chairman,
right.
isn't that either yes or no?
What?
It just seems to me that the answer is yes or no.
Okay. Who wants to send a letter supporting this, this variance?
Concept.
There's variance request.
Well,
No,
what's
the
the variance
variance
request? What does the variance say?
Does
I
Ned
can-
actually want a letter from us at this point?
No,
No, see,
no, you can see he's
To
left.
support
Exactly.
variance request for condominium conversion
All right,
on
that's
Thatcher Street.
because I
we're done.
said we're at an end. We're just not going to do it.
But it doesn't
We're not
say
going to
numbers. It doesn't
support
say
it.
6
We're not
units.
going to support it.
or oppose it.
We're not.
We are,
we're
we are not taking a position.
We're not going to communicate with the Board of Appeals unless the people want to go on their own.
Elliott Street?
Okay. What are these issues?
Hello.
I hope you enjoyed yourselves back there. But you saw the planning board at work
In action.
2 different ways.
In action. And Emily pulled us right together.
I'm not sure that's quite true.
Welcome. Introduce yourselves for the tape recorded, are you still
This
here,
guy looks
Ned?
You can't get rid of me. Like an old coin.
All right.
You're still batting 750 though, Ned.
I'm batting 1,000 when this is over, so we're fine.
750 is good.
750
No
isn't
one
bad
said it
either.
does not.
That's right. So I'm back, Ned Corcoran, attorney, resident of Milton, office in Quincy, and I'm here with Jim Sullivan from the Sullivan family, which is the owner and developer at 36 and 50 Elliott Street, the Milton Hill property, and Blair Hines, who's the landscape architect. really for a discussion and thoughts about what to do with respect to the blue spruce tree that is in front of the Henry House. One of the things I think was important, to some at least, was an effort to preserve that tree. And I know that Blair's got some photographs. I had emailed materials to Bill a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure whether they got redistributed, but Blair has got some boards and a couple of things, and it's been interesting because I've emailed all of the email tree in the neighborhood, and when I emailed to say that the tree was under duress and we might need to come up with an alternative plan, I immediately got a couple of responses to the negative, and so we started to withdraw this discussion. I initially had put it to Bill to put it on, and no sooner did I notify everybody that it was being withdrawn, but I got several emails from abutters who said, well, we really don't think too much of the tree. We'd prefer to see something there in the alternative. And so there's a real mix of opinion among the neighborhood that abuts this property as to whether what to do with respect to the spruce. It is under significant duress, not in part because of all of the construction activity that's going on around it. There is a spaghetti of utilities on the site. The sewer connection from the Henry House itself to the street misses the tree by a very short location, by short distance, and so the tree is being, the land around it is being carved away for a combination of utilities and other things, and that and other things with respect to the tree are really putting it under duress. So Blair has put together a plan with an alternative approaches. He's got a pretty strong preference as to one approach as opposed to another. We did get yesterday, a letter from Doug Hunt, from Richard Hunt and Sons, who's an arborist, suggesting that the tree is really in tough shape and it might be a safety issue with respect to efforts to preserve it. So it is with very mixed emotions that I am here as an abutter, but representing the developer team, because I drive by it, I walk by it all the time. It is and was a handsome tree, but I think my own sense of it is that its presence will tend to obscure the view of a handsomely reconstructed Henry House, and that an alternative plan that's essentially, as Blair will demonstrate, is important. So with that, I'll turn it over to Blair, and I'm not sure that we necessarily need approval, but I think we're certainly looking for some guidance.
Well, you would need approval, wouldn't you, because it would be part of the landscape plan that we approved. But it does seem to me that you've got to do your homework. You've always done your homework before. You've got to go to the neighborhood association and tell them what the deal is and what your recommendation is, and get them on board. And then, from there on, the sailing is going to be moderately smooth.
So,
Well,
let me turn it over to
sure. So,
Blair.
just to give kind of the history going back, I understood that in the beginning of our involvement with the project that, people wanted to preserve the Henry House, and there were a number of people who also spoke up about the blue spruce. Our plans always incorporated keeping the blue spruce. It wouldn't be my choice of a tree in that location. Its quality in terms of it's not really that historically suitable to a house of that age. I mean, more houses like that would more have like sugar maples or, rather than something that's a little bit more of a suburban tree. But, there wasn't a whole lot of benefit in trying to promote the idea of cutting down an existing tree when there were a number of people in the neighborhood who, at least spoke about the tree
I do know
favorably.
we have a tree history here of trees.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to go to how we got to where we are now. So we did not propose making any changes there, trying to make as little changes as possible. We focused on trying to preserve the historic, rubble granite wall along there, and that had also been in the plans from the very beginning, and, we had a bunch of plans that had some minor changes, but the blue spruce was always in it from day one. Fast forwarding into construction, there were a number of, when they went to get some utility tie-ins, where NSTAR wanted to have the electric, and I think, if I remember correctly, they had to redo the sewer line from the Henry House. They couldn't use the existing one. That resulted trenching on the west side of the tree, not just the east side, what the current plans were going to require in terms of putting in the new building. So that kind of put, excavations on both sides of the tree, and that's what brings us to today. Jim had asked me to come up with a couple of ideas that I thought would make for a better landscape in front of the Henry House, and we had prepared a sketch, which I don't know if you had seen or not, but to just cut to the chase, it was not favorably received by the neighborhood. And so that was withdrawn, leaving us with the issue of a tree that, the contractor is concerned about, like the safety of, whether his men or pedestrians might be hurt, and he doesn't want to be carrying the liability ball of, oops, well, the tree fell over and injured somebody. And that brought us to having the tree evaluated by an arborist. My own opinion now is that I think that we take the tree down, and I recommend that we replace it with what I think is a little bit more of a historically appropriate planting, which would be like 3 sugar maples, 3.5-inch diameter, which I think would be certainly, a reasonable, in my experience, equal to, rather than coming in there and putting in another blue spruce, which I don't think would be aesthetically the best approach, because as you can see from the photograph, depending where you walk, it really acts more to obscure, where something like a shade tree, after time as it grows up, you see under it, and I think that would be much more in keeping with, kind of the stately presence of an old house up the top of that rise. So that's my recommendation as a landscape architect. And I think that there was, I wouldn't say there was unanimous opinion in the neighborhood. There was divided opinion in the neighborhood. Some people liked the tree, other people could care less. And that brings us here to present to you our recommendations. We'd like to modify the landscape plan to remove the blue spruce and in its place to install 3 sugar maples on that embankment that were 3.5-inch caliper as compensation for removing a tree that had been in the former plan.
So I think that what we're going to have to do is I assume that the neighborhood association is hopelessly fragmented. But I don't assume that very deeply. I would want to hear from the neighborhood association as to, if they say it's in your capable hands, fine. But if they want to share with us, maybe they want to share the pros and cons. I don't know, but we do want to hear from the neighborhood association because and I guess you might as well get the revitalization committee to pitch in because it is it in there?
Yeah, they've commented on it before, on 3650 before.
And the purpose of that would be to decide whether we're getting a blue spruce to replace it, or sugar maples, or to get other opinions about whether the tree is dangerous or not. I'm not trying to understand
whether it's dangerous, what it should be replaced with, whether or not it can be cabled. Whatever they want to share with us, we want to hear from them, because we don't want to act without the input of the neighborhood association.
The tree, from what I'm reading, it doesn't say the tree is presently dangerous.
Right.
The tree is gonna become dangerous if you start digging up around the tree.
Right, after you
Which
cut
was-
all the roots.
Which in my mind loads itself to the question, one of the utilities you talked about was electrical. Well, you can take any route you want with the electrical, why don't we just route around the tree?
We had to do this. We are rooting around it. It's going basically perpendicular from an existing light pole.
Well, I mean, the point is go outside the root system of the tree with the rooting.
There's no room. There's no room. The sweep of the electrical is fine because we're undermining one side, but it was, the drainage on the hill was so deep. So our sweep was on the left. DPW had us change the sewer line in 50, which has to come that way. So now to preserve the wall has to come down.
Well, I just, not to disagree with you or anything in that sense, just staying with the electrical, why can't the electrical be rerouted around the tree? I mean, I
electrical
could reroute
runs
the
there.
electrical from this building to that building, I could go up to the fire station, go around the block, and come back to that building if that's the way I wanted to do it. I mean, I can't believe in the area of land you've got up there, with the existing building, the new building, that you can't find a way to route electrical around that root system.
It's however, all the utilities that are coming into the building were coming in on that corner.
Well, that may be the case, but I mean, you can, I can get, if I'm coming into this corner of the building and I want to get to the street there, I can go like this if I want with electrical. I can go like this if I want, or I can go like that. I mean, I can see the contractor sitting in a meeting with you and he says, I gotta go down there with the electrical. Well, that's gonna cause a problem with the tree. You ask the contractor, what should we do? Get rid of the tree.
Well, the whole thing is, but then I have to get rid of the wall that we just were putting up.
I don't know what the question is with the wall, I'm just starting with the tree.
All right, so the concern here is you want us to go and meet with the neighborhood, and if there are, 9 people who like the blue spruce, and 9 people who don't like it, and 9 people who don't have any opinion, we bring that back to you, and then you.
Right, and you say that the planning board would like the neighborhood association's recommendation about this.
All right, and it's.
And whatever it is, I mean, but that way we don't get right directly in the firing line.
Say if the opinion is divided, we may be ending up in the
We
fire
may
line.
end up there, but it's still.
Again, in my mind, I seem to be taking a step back from this discussion on whether they like the spruce or the maples or this.
Right.
I mean, like you said about a stately, a 3.5 inch diameter maple is gonna take us a good 65, 70, 80 years to become stately.
Have you seen the blue spruce lately? It doesn't take quite that long, but your point that it's not tomorrow.
35 years.
A question.
I'm probably gonna be going, put it that
About
way.
20 years. that's
For
what
a
I would
single-
say.
What are you gonna do with the facade of the house? You're gonna keep it, you're gonna make it
Yeah.
look pristine?
Yeah, we're gonna redo the house.
So wouldn't it be nice to see that house in all its grandeur with the wall down below?
Well, the
and
tree
nothing-
is, yeah.
I mean, we're
it's a
just
disaster.
talking about spruce right now,
No,
right?
actually, Bernie, the reason people have landscaping is to fit their house into the natural environment.
Yeah.
So,
Look at the,
But the idea would be to plant said replacement trees, whether it's the maples or something else, so that they're framing the house from the street
Correct.
and not
I
obscuring
think that was
it.
really what we're
Currently-
looking for.
Yeah, currently the spruce, I mean, I like blue spruces, but
Been there
it
for 80
is-
years, man.
from this
if
angle,
you're
it's
here,
obscuring the
if you're
house.
standing here, you get a better view of
Well,
that.
that's why I said from this angle, it is obscuring the house, so,
All right, but that's what we want to do.
So nobody's concerned about why the blue spruce has to come down?
well, then that comes to the next
I
question.
mean,
It would
somebody
be
put in a
helpful-
letter here, I have included a mocked-up drawing indicating the work locations associated with the tree. I don't see no drawing with marked up telling me why the utilities can't be rerouted around to avoid the tree. I
that
mean,
house
if the
would
people in
look
the neighborhood
beautiful.
would like
So
to
that's the other piece.
We're the
of-
planning
yes.
board, if the people in the neighborhood would like the blue spruce to stay there, we should understand why the blue spruce
If
can't stay there.
If they
Yeah, we need a
like the
plan.
blue
I
spruce
agree.
to stay.
Look at
then
it, that's
we
why
will-
it can't stay there. It's falling apart.
Well, that brings, so there's two things
What's-
here.
what's-
One is we need to see.
What's the
plan.
longevity of a blue spruce?
It's had it, it's had it.
The guy says in 80 years it's declining. In 80 years, a lot of us are declining. It doesn't mean it's gonna be, what does that mean? It's dead in another
No,
60
no,
years?
No,
No.
what would it mean that, if you had this tree in your yard, and you wouldn't do any construction around it, probably in another 30 years, it would probably lose about half of its lower branches or more and be at the point where you'd be looking at it and think, this thing's not looking very good. What should we replant? So it's not, so I would say it's probably at about 2/3 of what would be a reasonable expectation of its life if it was undisturbed here. So it's not, although it might live for an extra, 75 or 100 years if it was in Colorado, they don't last that long in the Boston area because they really are adapted to a different kind of a growing environment than we have. So it's on its last, what's called declining legs, meaning the last about.
But aren't we all?
No, I understand. I'm just trying to give you the information.
But my point is.
Right.
That I'm not even fighting for it. I'm fighting to understand why you, as the landscape architect, somewhere along the line decided the blue spruce was a good idea to stay there.
We never wanted. It's one of those things where you choose, I'll tell you how it was, and this is maybe where I'm a little wimpy as a landscape architect. It's like, what battles do you want to fight when you have a project and you have a lot of people who are upset about it? Maybe you say, oh, let's cut down this tree so everyone can get mad at you about the tree. But it just seemed to me to be a little bit gratuitous since there was at least a few people who spoke up in favor of it. Why go, why say, oh, let's cut it down and put sugar maples would be better? Just seemed to us to be inviting another level of.
This is the biggest contention I've seen on this project to date. I don't know what you're talking about. This project has been very well received.
Yeah. I don't remember that. I didn't remember that part of it. Yeah, and I think the 29 meetings I went to, I don't think I recall.
I'll just be honest with you. I just see sitting in a trailer and the contractor saying, get that tree out of there or else I'm gonna have to root over there, it's gonna cost you money. All right, get the tree out of there.
Well, we'll go to the neighborhood.
Don't get the tree out of there.
Sorry.
Right
The
away.
contractor has an easy explanation of things. Get the tree out of there, and I go right down there, and it won't cost so much money.
All right.
Okay, well,
If he
we'll be back
says
to you
that,
then, it
don't
sounds
do
like.
it without coming back.
I'd say move the house.
Tear down the house? I don't think that's a good idea. They did not like that.
No, he said move.
I know,
not-
just teasing.
So we'll want to see that plan. You may have emailed us the plan, Ned,
You have
but
them both.
we'll have to,
Yeah.
yeah, just to see.
I mean, it's just,
Precisely
it
what you're
becomes
talking
such that it's obvious that it's.
Well, you see the site. I mean, if you look at the site where we had to excavate to put, on plan, it looks fine. You go stand there, it is,
You may explain it such that it's very obvious.
it's either gonna fall or come down.
Mr. Sullivan, how's your farm?
Good. Florida. You won't be back.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Well, thanks for coming in. Ned, always nice to see you.
Nice to be here, thank you.
Good. Take care.
Good evening.
Other business?
The master plan update, how are you doing on that?
I'm fine.
Do you have a recommendation on houses off of Thatcher Street yet?
No, I'm sorry, we did not put that to the top of the agenda, so.
Okay.
Master plan, we just had a meeting last week. The consultants are going on a tour with John Cronin and Paul Travers on the 16th. We will be setting up another tour for members of the master plan committee, and you guys will be welcome to join us when we do that. It's just, the consultants can meet during the week, and most of the members of the master plan committee are working and have to meet on the weekends, so.
Okay.
Housing production plan update, if you don't mind me segueing directly into that.
No, I don't. I think
Okay.
they are doing very well.
I do my best. So Bill left me these things to distribute to them. I have no idea why I got landed with them to distribute.
Well,
But they
because
appear to
you
be
were-
frequently asked questions on housing production plans. We have some work to do as a planning board on this.
I thought we had segued this to the,
Master Plan Committee, they segued it right back again. They said they have, they're on this and medical marijuana, but that's not on our list, so I can't talk to you about that. They said they will have plenty to do with the master plan, and it seemed to them, when I described what was left to do, that the planning board and the board of selectmen needed to do it. So what we need to do is Bill, and I am going to forget his name, but he is our superb GIS expert, have been working on a plan that shows all of the town-owned parcels in town, strangely enough. We need to look at this as a planning board and come up with our own ideas of which of these town-owned parcels would be potentially appropriate for affordable housing. We need to then discuss this with the Board of Selectmen, and we need to hold a public hearing on it and get all of this information worked into the draft plan. So we
but we
should,
need to get also an identification of other sites.
Well, we certainly need to
Because
start.
just starting with town-owned sites is not adequate.
Well, we have to start with
We
town-owned.
can start
Starting
with-
with town-owned
we can
sites is
start,
adequate.
but
Finishing with them
start,
is not
you know,
necessarily adequate.
We need some standards for identification of good sites.
So-
Because having a site without having a site walk and without having any standards is going to be tough.
So what we need to do, Mr. Chairman, is we need
With
to
a bus.
schedule.
We need a van.
We can probably get the same one that's taking the consultants around. I think it's owned by the police, and I'm sure they'd be delighted to lend it to us.
Right.
We need to schedule a meeting, a working meeting on the housing production plan, either at our next meeting or in January.
We're going to give it some time at our next meeting,
Excellent, so we will do that.
okay?
And then, I don't know what 591
Okay,
Blue Hill Avenue is,
591
so
Blue
tours.
Hill Avenue is a discussion of a proposed A&R update. And I thought that I had made unmistakably clear that this is not an A&R plan. This is the construction of Perkins Lane as a new street.
Yes,
And so it is a subdivision plan, and we want to see a preliminary subdivision
yes,
plan.
why does this keep coming back to us as an A&R?
He keeps saying that he wants an A&R because he doesn't want to do a subdivision
I
plan.
thought we all agreed that
And
it
we
was subdivision.
have all agreed that
Okay,
it
good.
is a subdivision
All right.
plan. Okay, now, no town planner, no town planner's report. But we will,
I do have one quick thing on the master plan that I almost forgot. I just want you to know that the consultants are working with the art department of the high school to come up with the logo for the master plan. So, and then they will be incorporating students from the schools, all of the schools, into the master plan process.
all right,
I thought that was pretty cool. That's it.
do we have a motion?
Ed?
Yes, I move we adjourn.
All right, all in favor? Aye, we are now adjourned.
Wow.
I gotta go.